Joe's the Executive Director of the Land Information Access Association for the last 20 years. Many of you probably met Joe over the last month and a half. He's been running around the community meeting with a lot of people. Prior to his work at the Land Information Access Association, he was the Director of Science and Technology Research for the Michigan Legislature. Joe has worked on a broad range of land use planning and urban growth management projects across Michigan, and has authored or co-authored numerous publications on this topic. And I know is eager to keep going there.
Yeah, I don't like big introductions. Thank you again so much for being here today. It's a beautiful day, and I know you're taking a lot of time out of the day to be here. So thanks for that. I've met a lot of you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here in your community. We're talking about Resilient Monroe. That's the name of the project that we're working on, and I'm going to come back to that. I would like to really focus on your community. And as John mentioned, we shared some information, so you're going to see some repeats in my stuff from what John gave you. So a little bit of that, maybe make it a little closer to home. You know, as we've just talked, you've heard through John's talk that we've obviously we're dealing with economic challenges in the community here, as well as throughout the state. Whether that's global competition or whether that's local, maybe loss of population, especially young people. Certainly across the state, many of our communities are struggling with social issues, environmental issues, concerns that affect all of us with the decline in housing values here in Monroe and throughout the state. It has been a challenge to keep our neighborhoods up and strong, and obviously through some of the competition, we've lost some of the key industries and businesses in our communities. Stormwater, runoff, sedimentation, that's all environmental challenge to, say, maintaining water quality, and it certainly continues throughout the state. The struggle is not so much focused any longer on point sources, but it is the non-point sources, the runoff from the farm fields and from our parking lots and other sources. Those are major challenges at a local level. Flooding at a local level is a serious concern too, and we've talked about it through climate change. Some of the information that Dr. Andreessen gave us warns us perhaps that we've got to be thinking in a broader way about the changes in, say, storm activity. You know, the climate models, from what we have read and heard, Dr. Andreessen is partly involved with Great Lakes, let's see if I get this right, Integrated Science Assessment at University of Michigan. GLISA is a combined effort with the University of Michigan and Michigan State University. There's a lot of information coming from GLISA to share with all of us about climate change and adaptation to climate change. Some of the discussion, of course, has focused on this problem of extreme storms. And of course, more moisture in spring and winter, but the storms can be more dramatic, and that suggests some things to us that you've recently experienced. 2010, you saw some tornadoes come through this area, pretty substantial. The heat events that you saw last summer, as I understand it, in July, 700 people across the state essentially went to the hospital because of heat issues. It's a very significant challenge to your community and to communities across the state. These kind of extreme things that come from drought, I heard Dr. Andreessen say, if you said it today or you did say it last night, the amount of loss through drought is stunning in terms of the economic, the agricultural economy and the damage that can cause. And you saw it here, right across the state. As we drove from Traverse City to Monroe last summer, I watched things get more parched as we came downstate, and there were it was clear that there were a lot of crops being lost across the state. That's a challenge. And again, the heat events. The less cooling at night, that's kind of frightening. If you are an older person, single in your home, kind of locked up in your home, so to speak, if you are not aware of opportunities to get cooling, that's a dangerous condition to be subjected to, a lot of heat and not being able to cool off. So these are challenges along with the whole thing with hail. I was watching some YouTubes from Monroe. You all had a hail event a few years ago. It was pretty stunning. People taking shots out their door. I'm sure you've seen some of those YouTubes, and things were popping all over the place. I don't know how much damage was done, but it did not look good. And it's the stuff that we don't prepare for often. There's a challenge from a psychic standpoint. Once I get through it, I want to forget about it. And maybe I'm not preparing for it in the future. But the costs are going to come with us. You've heard about the losses. We certainly know that there is a tendency, in the literature anyway indicates there's an increase in food costs that we can see continuing to increase. That's just not drought related. That's of course related to the inputs. And I'm not going to speak for the agricultural guy here. He knows. But there's a whole lot of expense. So there are some predictable changes. So what does that mean to us? It means that we need to plan. And we need to look toward a more resilient community. We can do that through learning, adapting. A new way of viewing our planning process is appropriate at this time, to say, what can we do through a planning process that would allow us to become more creative across jurisdictional boundaries? What can we do in a planning process that will draw out more ideas from throughout the community? Let's not stay right in a planning commission. Let's reach out to the entire community and bring people to the table and discuss it. Resilience in the dictionary definition has a couple of different aspects to it. How do you, if something is resilient, it can withstand a disruption or a shock, can withstand and not deform completely out of its shape. Something can be resilient, or it can be tending to recover quickly from some misfortune or change. That's another definition in the Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, for whatever that's worth. I take a look at that and say, well, what is community resilience then? Community resilience is, in fact, about the capacity to withstand a disruption or a shock. How do you take a hit? You all take a hit from time to time. The river rising can, remind you of that, but sometimes back in, was it 2011? We had rainstorm here that I hear was like 4 or 5 inches over 6-7 days, and you had flooding in the streets of the city of Monroe. And of course, in the township, some of your community was in trouble for a short period of time. But that was significant. You were able to take that hit. The capacity, other part of resilience, is that capacity that you have to learn from those adversities and actually change or develop some strategies in order to adapt and be able to kind of move about and make some sense out of what the future may hold and be able to move ahead and thrive, do more than simply take the hit and get back up, actually do well. Resilient communities are likely to have similar types of characteristics according to the literature that we've looked at. Diversity in the community is a key term. Diversity in all its stripes. Diversity in the economy, a diversity in its social and human characteristics, diversity in its environmental characteristics. Uplands, lowlands, wetlands, forests, farmlands, that's a type of environmental or natural resource diversity that enhances the quality of the community and its resilient capacity. Social capital, the connections between people and the capacity for people to interact. My friends, my neighbors, my relatives are the people I go to for loans, right? The deeper their pockets are, the more resilient I am in some respects, but that has certain to do with certainly part of the social capital that we're talking about. But it's also the relationships in this room. The people here who, and if you don't know everybody in this room, I'd like you to try and work on that, because you all are very important people here in this community. Modularity, ways of breaking down local and regional production capacity is an example of how we can modularize a little bit and become more resilient in the face of change. Tight feedback loops. We understand from folks in upstream, there are a few dams upstream. I don't know which ones there are, and are we talking to them about what's coming downstream from upstream? That's part of the feedback loop. Let's get some information into that system. There are, of course, lots of other ways we can get feedback loop in terms of understanding what's happening in your community, social statistics, etc. Innovation, of course, is key. It is key to your ability to change. Novel solutions, entrepreneurial solutions, things that will help. When you allow for creativity and you foster creativity within the community, you're going to strengthen your ability in terms of resilience. And of course, we often talk about ecosystem services. The more use of ecosystem services, such as wetlands do a great job of retaining floodwaters, at least slowing them down. And they certainly do a great job of filtering out some of the waters that might come off of the parking lots and the farm fields. So wetlands are a great source of service. That I know some economists actually put dollar values on that. So we know also that trees can actually cool your neighborhoods. So you're getting a service from those trees. So the ecosystem services matter a lot. And I have a longer part of this talk that I did before. And then John sent me this illustration Monday or Tuesday this week. I said, oh my gosh, that kind of puts it all together. It's really pretty wild. And then there's a video that goes with it, so I'm going to give you a little connection there. Is that all right? Is that illegal? Okay, I'm just checking. You know how that is. Some things are copyrighted. Isn't that a great illustration? That's a great PowerPoint, huh? Love that thing. Actually, what it is, you can see there's kind of a movement in there. You can kind of see the swirling going on. Those are arrows going every which way. And it is essentially a way of looking at resilience within a community and looking at the moving parts and how the relationships are within different groupings. And they've identified 4 different kind of areas of real concentration to think about, and I'll just review them. And John actually talked to those points a moment ago. Habitats conducive to life, he mentioned that. So part of the key part of that is, what are we doing with our natural resources in our area and other resources in the area that are regenerative? What can we do that we know we're going to be able to continue to do? There's a certain amount of farming we can do on the land, right, that is okay, and it's going to be able to be, especially, but what I heard when I was a kid, this is before a lot of the inputs came along, is rotation. We do crop rotation. It was a good, sensible thing to do to maintain the quality of the soil and the land. So what can we do to keep things, keep that habitat? Let me back up here. The damage part on the other side is the extraction part, and extraction might be the erosion of the soils. So what are we doing that might prevent the erosion of the soils so we can retain that capacity to produce? So these are opposing forces in part of our ability to be resilient. Same thing with economic stuff. John did a real good job going through the economy portion of that, but a lot of what we're seeing that adds to resilience to the community is that local investment. And we talked a little bit about it last night. I think the city manager was mentioning that there's a lot of potential local investment. There's a lot of capacity within this community. Well, let's put that investment to work. Local ownership is key to maintaining the central part of your community and being resilient. Surely innovation is another part of that, and we talk about the sustainable access to resources. On the flip side of that, the pressures come from when we have a lot of consumer debt, when we have a lot of reliance on non-local goods. There's a lot of money heading out of town. And then, of course, inability to add value to those products you have. There may be some options here. Ventower is huge in your community. What can we feed into that process? What's the product that might go into that before it leaves, before that tower leaves? Is there something we can do there? So there are a lot of ideas that need to be talked about and kicked around. Community access to resources and relationships is key to our understanding of resilience. The quality of your social networks. How well are you communicating? How well are you providing access to the services that people need? Are people able to access them? That's partly transportation, right? It's partly how do I get there? We've heard some issues about transportation in this community, so that's part of it. Demand for the local services and reliance on non-local goods are, of course, part of the pressure going the other way to limit our community access to resources and good relationships. And then we did talk about high-quality decision-making. How are we enabling citizens to actually participate in the process? And that's the challenge for us with the master planning process. How do we reach out to the larger community? How do these public meetings actually turn into discussions where we can actually have helpful communication, and rather than disabling or disenfranchising citizens and leaving them somewhere off at a distance? We have to reach out and figure out how to do that. We need your help to make that happen through this process. This is the little equation in the corner of that great big illustration. It came down to this little thing in the corner, and that's kind of what John and I were talking about back and forth. The addition to resilience, developing resilience, has to do with maintaining habitat, natural resources. It has to do with the quality of those relationships needed to thrive. It has to do with the local community being able to produce enough and actually developing its own local economy. And it has to do with people being involved in good decision-making. And the opposite side of that, of course, are the other things, but they also include the shocks that we've been talking about. We can't stop bad things from happening. Sometimes they do. Sometimes a tornado comes through town. What do you do when that happens, and how do we get back up? It has a lot to do with the social network that you're building right here and through the planning process. Which brings me to the project. And I'm going to do this real quickly, but I want to make sure that everyone understands why we're here today. Some of you haven't heard this talk before, so I'm going to quick go through it. We're here to help the community do some land use planning and actually community-wide planning. The geographic focus is, as you heard, the city of Monroe, Frenchtown Charter Township, and Monroe Charter Township. That's the kind of community side that we're talking about. We're talking with the 3 jurisdictions. All of them are participating. Everybody, so the 3 jurisdictions have passed resolutions. They're at the table. We've got 3 planning commissions meeting together. That's very unusual in this state. All 3 planning commissions coming together at the same time to talk this community through some change and development. Results should guide the future. One of the results will be a new city plan, a revised master plan for the city of Monroe, and some suggestions for the townships. And all 3 will have reviewed their master plans at the same time. That's almost unheard of, too, that they actually do it at the same time. So that's way cool. Based on public participation, we will have some ability to help guide the future, certainly, with the help of the citizens in the community. And we hope it focuses on resilience, economic resilience and climate resilience. So who's cooperating? City of Monroe, Frenchtown Charter Township, Monroe Charter Township, and Monroe County is helping out as well. Lots of organizations, many of you represented, have already let us use your logo. Thank you very much. Hope you go to our website and look at your logo and also like our Facebook page and all that good stuff. Our organization, LIA, is here to help move this process along. We're Harry Burkholder is a certified planner. We've got people on staff who are helping us help the process in developing some ideas and new approaches to planning and ultimately the master plan for the city. We also have a lot of other folks, and they're represented here in the room helping us along. Michigan Municipal League, Michigan Townships Association, the American Planning Association Michigan chapter is here. The Community Foundation for Monroe County is helping us out and is at the table, and the University of Michigan is giving us a hand, and you'll hear from Dick Norton in a moment. So we're really delighted with the depth of the team. We have funding from the Kresge Foundation and the Americana Foundation. That's where most of the money came from. So it's coming in from outside. So this is money coming this way, which is a good thing. We also have some support, of course, from the local governments. They have some money on the table. Like to have skin in the game. That's a good thing. And we're all participating to help acknowledge that this community has challenges and has great opportunity. So from our perspective, the point is to bring your communities, your townships and city together to talk about one community and help build a more resilient community.